Trae Young's future in Atlanta may have just reached a breaking point. Reports suggest the star guard wants out, and Miami has quickly emerged as the team everyone is talking about. If the rumors are true, one of the NBA's biggest stars could be forcing his way to South Beach. Here's what's happening. It started with a decision that almost nobody saw coming. Trae Young will reportedly test free agency after half a season with the Washington Wizards, with Mark J. Spears of ESPN reporting that the guard plans to decline his $49 million player option, although the Wizards still remain the frontrunner to sign him, even though he still expects multiple team max interest. Think about that for a second. He turned down $49 million, just walked away from it. That's not a guy who's comfortable sitting still. That's a guy who thinks he can get more from someone, and the Miami Heat were watching. All indications out of Washington had been that the Wizards planned to get Young to reject his player option and sign a longer-term extension at a lower per-year number. That said, teams were eyeing a potential Young trade, including the Miami Heat, who saw him as a big fish backup if they struck out on landing Giannis Antetokounmpo, reports Jake Fisher at the Stein Line. Big fish. That's what Miami called him. Not a consolation prize. A big fish. And the key thing to watch was this. If Young picked up that $49 million player option, which he had to do by draft day, it was a sign he was about to be traded. He didn't pick it up. He walked away from it entirely. While Young's preference appeared to be to remain in Washington, the fact that he opted out meant he was free to explore his options with other teams. So the door cracked open, and Miami stepped right up to it. According to Jake Fisher, the Miami Heat were seriously considering a pursuit of Young if their chase for a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade failed this summer. Now, to understand why this moment matters so much, you have to understand what Trae Young actually is and what he went through to get here. Young is averaging 25 points and 9 assists per game for his career. The only other player to average at least 25 points and 9 assists for the entirety of an NBA career is Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson, one of the 50 greatest players in the history of the sport. That's the company Trae sits in statistically. Young led the Hawks to Game 6 of the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals, to a surprise run to the 2024 NBA Cup semifinals, and paced the league in total assists on 3 separate occasions. At 27, he was already the Hawks' all-time leader in assists and three-pointers, and yet Atlanta pushed him out. When the Hawks chose not to extend Young, it started the countdown to the end of his tenure with the team that drafted him number 5 in 2018. The Hawks, who did sign Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker to 4-year contracts, worth $162 million, had made it clear that the future of the franchise didn't necessarily include Young. That's when Young and his agents began looking for an off-ramp, and a team that would pay him through his prime years. That's the word that matters, prime. At 27, Trae believes he's not even there yet, and the numbers from his last full season back that up. He led the NBA with 11.6 assists per game in his last full season, with the franchise in 2024-25. He didn't decline. Atlanta decided it didn't want him anymore. Big difference. The Atlanta Hawks traded Trae Young, the face of the franchise for the past 8 seasons, to the Washington Wizards mid-game while Atlanta hosted the New Orleans Pelicans on a Wednesday night. Mid-game. They traded him while the game was happening. He was sitting on the bench in street clothes, and by the time the final buzzer sounded, he was a Washington Wizard. I'm walking into this next chapter with my head high and my eyes forward. Young wrote on social media, "It's time to see what's possible. When the support is real and the vision is clear, we move." The support is real, a subtle shot at Atlanta. And now, with Miami calling, support is coming from another direction entirely. To understand why Miami is now hunting Trae Young, you have to understand why Atlanta let him go in the first place. Because what happened in Atlanta wasn't just a trade. It was a slow, grinding severance that played out over 2 seasons. The Hawks had gone 2-8 in the 10 games Young played this season, unable to withstand his defensive shortcomings. Atlanta's defensive rating ballooned to 126-2 with Young on the court, nearly 5 points worse than the bottom-ranked Utah Jazz defense. That's a damning number, and it gave Atlanta the justification they needed. There were plenty of signs a Young trade could be coming. The front office decided not to extend the guard's contract and gave defensive stalwart Dyson Daniels a 4-year, $100 million extension. And with the emergence of Jalen Johnson coinciding with Young's injury absence, the franchise got a long look at a roster led by a different all-star caliber player. Jalen Johnson was that player. Young was 10 games and done in Atlanta's 2025-26 season because of injury, and when he came back, the team was actually better. That's a hard truth. The Hawks weren't just moving on from Trae because they wanted to. They were moving on because the math finally worked against him. Multiple injuries, including a sprained right MCL that sidelined him for 22 games over the fall, limited him to just 10 games of the 2025-26 campaign prior to the trade. Even when available, Young's production had dropped to 19 3-points and 8-9 assists per game before he was moved. So the Hawks were watching their guy get hurt, come back, lose games, and in the background, negotiations for an extension were going nowhere. Atlanta wasn't making him an offer at all. Atlanta Hawks four-time All-Star Trae Young and his agents began working with the franchise on a trade. Young's reps and Hawks general manager Onsi Saleh had begun positive and collaborative talks over the past week on finding a resolution. Collaborative, that's the word they used. But make no mistake, if Atlanta had wanted to keep him, they would have kept him. They had months to extend him. They chose not to. Leading up to the trade, it had been reported by several outlets that Young did not have much trade value across the league. There had been no real suitor to emerge for Young until the Wizards surfaced as a legitimate destination. No market, that's brutal. The man who led the NBA in assists the previous year had no real bidders. The only team willing to take on his salary structure was a rebuilding Washington squad sitting near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. The Atlanta Hawks traded four-time All-Star Trae Young to the Washington Wizards for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. The trade ended Young's stint as the face of the Hawks franchise after 7+ seasons and sent the 27-year-old to his preferred destination in the nation's capital. To be the lead guard for the Wizards, his preferred destination, Young chose Washington. He wanted to be there. He saw a young team with no real point guard as a chance to be the man, to do what he never got to do in Atlanta, which was build something himself. Top Washington officials Michael Winger and Will Dawkins had been searching for an anchor for their burgeoning young talent, and the franchise believed the trade was the next step in the organization's development process amid a rebuild. It also reunited Young with Travis Schlenk, the now Wizards executive who brought him to Atlanta in a draft night deal in 2018. Full circle, the guy who drafted him was now the guy building around him. And Trae arrived in DC fired up. I know our team is going to be ready. We have young guys that have been through the rebuilding stage, Young said on the Pivot podcast. They went through a lot of losing the last few years, and they're tired of losing. I want to be there with them when we're winning. This is the most slept on I've been in my whole life, he added. Imagine the Wizard. Trust me, I'm probably just entering my prime. That's not someone who sounds like he's running away to Miami. That's someone who sounds like he wants to prove something, right where he is. But here's the thing. Wanting to stay and actually staying are two very different things when the Miami Heat are involved, and when $212 million is dangling in front of you. The Miami Heat have been chasing greatness for years, and every single offseason it seems like they get close, only to watch someone else take the prize. The Heat are always looking for ways to improve the roster, especially with their contending window looking more and more closed with each passing year. Since they made it to the NBA Finals in 2023, they were involved in trade talks for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they almost made the trade for Ja Morant in the middle of the 2025-26 campaign. In the end, the Heat decided to stay the course, only to find themselves on the outside looking in on the playoff picture after the Charlotte Hornets eliminated them in the play-in tournament. Read that again. Eliminated by the Charlotte Hornets in the play-in tournament. That's where Miami is right now. Not rebuilding, not competing. Stuck in the brutal middle. Too good to tank. Not good enough to win anything that matters. The Heat entered the 2025-26 season expecting to remain a legitimate Eastern Conference contender. Instead, offensive inconsistency and recurring injuries undermined their momentum almost immediately. And that's the real problem, offense. Miami doesn't have anyone who can create a shot for themselves or for others when the game gets tight in the fourth quarter. Bam Adebayo is elite, but you can't ask a center to be your primary ball handler in crunch time. Too often, Miami found itself struggling to generate quality looks in the half court. Defenses loaded up against Harrow, clogged driving lanes, and forced the Heat into difficult possessions late in the shot clock. Young immediately changes that equation, and that's why Trae is the answer Miami is hunting for. Few players in basketball possess his combination of shooting range and playmaking vision. His ability to stretch defenses creates spacing opportunities that simply did not exist for Miami throughout much of last season. The fit alongside Adebayo is particularly fascinating. Adebayo has long been one of the league's most versatile screening big men. Pairing him with one of basketball's elite pick-and-roll operators could unlock an entirely new level of offensive efficiency. Defenses would face an impossible choice: commit extra attention to Young, and Adebayo becomes a devastating short-roll playmaker. It's genuinely one of the most dangerous pick-and-roll combinations you could draw up on a napkin. Trae pulls defenders out to half court with his shooting range, and Bam punishes them on the roll. That's not a backup plan. That's a legitimate weapon. Jake Fisher said Young was another big fish target for Miami. If it couldn't land Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard and Ja Morant were also listed as options for Miami. So the Heat had a list. Giannis at the top, then Kawhi, then Morant, then Trae. Every name on that list either wasn't available or didn't want South Beach. And now the clock was ticking. Jake Fisher of the Stein Line reported that while the expectation remained that Young would find a long-term deal with the Wizards, several teams, including the Miami Heat, were considering trade avenues to acquire the four-time All-Star guard. This came as the Heat continued attempts to acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo, a player who was also being targeted by the Boston Celtics. The Celtics, Boston was in on Giannis too. Every team Miami wants, someone else is fighting for just as hard. That's been the story of the Pat Riley era's second chapter. Always in the room, never at the table when the deal gets done. It seems every offseason, the Heat are involved in trade negotiations for a star player, yet never actually land said star player. Wizards fans lived this in 2023 when Miami was the frontrunner to land Bradley Beal before the Phoenix Suns swooped in and acquired him. Bradley Beal went to Phoenix. Giannis, the Celtics, or whoever lands him. Miami keeps swinging, keeps missing. Trae Young might genuinely be their last real shot this offseason at upgrading the roster in a meaningful way. Here's where it gets complicated, because Miami wanting Trae Young and Miami being able to afford Trae Young are two different conversations entirely. The issue was that it was unlikely Miami could afford Young on a salary close to the maximum contract he was on in Atlanta, or the maximum contract, $212.9 million over 4 years. He could sign as a free agent if they kept both Wiggins and Harrow. Miami currently had approximately $33 million in luxury tax space. $33 million in luxury tax space. Young's max deal runs roughly $53 million a year. The math does not work unless Miami moves someone significant. And that means Tyler Harrow or Andrew Wiggins has to go. Miami had several large salaries that would need to be included in a potential Young trade. That didn't include Bam Adebayo's $49.5 million salary, because Pat Riley said Miami was never trading its star center. That left Tyler Harrow at $33 million and Andrew Wiggins at $30 million as trade pieces. One of those two players had to be included for monetary reasons. So the question became, which one? And neither answer was clean. Harrow, the younger and more talented of the two, made more sense for Washington, but that didn't necessarily make sense for Miami, because a Young-Adebayo duo wasn't much better than a Harrow-Adebayo duo. And if the Heat traded Harrow, they were essentially replacing him with Young and running back a roster that went 43-39 and missed the playoffs last season. That's the cold, hard truth about this whole thing. Swapping Harrow for Trae, keeping Bam, keeping the same core. You're not dramatically better, you're just different. And different isn't worth blowing up your roster for. So what does the trade actually look like if Miami goes a different direction? One proposed package had the Heat receiving Trae Young and a 2031 first-round pick swap, while the Wizards received Tyler Harrow, Nikola Jovic, a 2027 unprotected first-round pick, a 2029 unprotected first-round pick, and the rights to the 2031 first-round pick swap. That's a significant haul for Washington. 2 unprotected firsts, a young player, and the Heat's best scorer outside of Bam. But the Wizards would have to want it, and that's the leverage problem here. The Wizards held the leverage in this situation. They had no urgency to sell, and that was the most important variable in the entire equation. Washington held all the cards. They got Trae for a song, CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, essentially salary filler and a role player. And now, months later, the Heat were coming to Washington with first-round picks, trying to buy the guy back. The Wizards could sit back and let Miami stew. And then there was the deadline issue. Young was traded from the Atlanta Hawks to Washington in January and carried a $49 million player option for the 2026-27 season. That option had to be exercised before June 23, the first day of the NBA draft. for any trade to be legally executable. The clock was ticking. June 23, draft day. Everything had to happen before the lights went on at the podium. Young had a $49 million option. He wouldn't have given that up if he didn't expect there to be something better out there. Even if the Wizards were in pole position, it wasn't an open and shut case. His camp had to believe there was a better deal out there for him than whatever Washington was currently offering, or that they could at least leverage Washington into a better offer. That's the game. That's why the opt-out mattered so much. He wasn't just saying no to $49 million. He was saying to Washington, match what the market gives me, or I walk. And part of that leverage was Miami sitting right there with their checkbook open. The Heat had their shot. The opt-out happened. The deadline arrived. And then the NBA moved fast. The Heat landed Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks on Monday night in exchange for a massive haul of players and draft picks. There it is. Miami's dream scenario actually came true. Giannis is a Heat. The backup plan became unnecessary because the main plan worked. The city of Miami gets its franchise-altering star, and Trae Young suddenly had no suitor in South Beach anymore. Trae Young was the latest Miami target to come off the hypothetical radar for the Heat. Although Young was declining his $48.9 million player option with the Washington Wizards, he wasn't expected to leave DC. ESPN's Brian Windhorst reported that the Wizards planned to retain Young on a 3-year deal. And so the leverage Young had been building, the opt-out, the Heat rumors, the open market, it all evaporated the moment Pat Riley got his man. But here's what's fascinating about what happened next. Washington didn't just retain Young, they went all the way in. The Wizards agreed to a 4-year extension with their star point guard on a deal worth approximately $212 million per Shams Charania of ESPN. 4 years, $212 million on draft eve, one day before Washington was set to pick #1 overall. Trae Young will be staying with the Washington Wizards after signing a new deal. That makes him the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future. The deal came after some tense few days that followed the decline of his initial $49 million player option for the 2026-2027 NBA season. Tense few days. The opt-out created genuine drama. There was a real window, maybe 72 hours, where Trae Young on the Miami Heat was not just a rumor, but a live possibility. Every team with cap space was watching, and Washington blinked first. Young and the Wizards agreed to a 4-year, $212 million deal that will have him signed through the 2029-30 season. Young opted out of the final year of his previous deal, which was worth $48.9 million, and will now be paid an average of $53 million a year. Fans on social media couldn't believe the deal, with some calling it the worst contract in the NBA. The reaction online was instant and brutal. Who was Washington bidding against? Said one user. It's a fair question. Miami's interest evaporated the moment Giannis landed in Florida. The Wizards may have panicked and overpaid for a deal they could have gotten at a discount. His contract already looks like a massive reach, with one salary model estimating it as a $97 million overpay. The model had Young valued at $115.1 million over the next 4 years, assuming an average of 70 games played at 34 minutes per game, making the $212 million contract underwater by $97 million. $97 million of overpay. That's the number analysts are throwing around. And the Wizards signed it the day before the draft, at a moment when the only team with real leverage to take Young off their hands had just pivoted to Giannis. Young is expected to lead the revamped Wizards for the next few years, alongside former NBA champion Anthony Davis, who has expressed commitment to the team, and the #1 pick of the upcoming NBA draft. Young, Davis, and the #1 pick. That's a real nucleus. It's a legitimate rebuild with a legitimate ceiling. If everyone stays healthy, if the pick hits, if the roster pieces around them actually work. And through it all, Trae never really left. He dangled the opt-out. He let Miami's name circulate. He used the Heat's interest the same way a free agent is supposed to squeeze maximum value out of the team that wanted him most. Washington buckled. $212 million says they were scared to lose him. The dollar total that the sides agreed upon for this extension essentially matches the most that Young could have made on the free agent market if he had signed somewhere other than Washington. He maxed himself out without ever leaving. That's the whole story. Trae Young didn't demand a trade to Miami so much as he let Miami's interests do the demanding for him. And it worked. He's the highest paid wizard in franchise history, with Giannis going to Miami, with the no one pick about to walk through the door in DC. And with a team that, for the first time in a long time, is building something real. The Heat moved on to a bigger fish. But the fish they used as bait? He just cashed out for $212 million